Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening. I'm Manchita Rairaj, and it's so nice to see some very familiar faces on this webinar. It is such a pleasure today to introduce my friend, Beth Maksym. And Beth has been teaching for a dozen years, and she is also the membership chair of the Greater Chicago ORS chapter. She teaches general music at the in the Plainfield district in Illinois, and she earned her master's from Vancouver College. She's an Orff Schulwerk a certified educator, completing all three levels at Vandercook. So Beth has presented workshops on creating general music curriculum for special ed and self-contained students and incorporating the Orff method into special ed classrooms. So it is such a pleasure to welcome her because this was all her master's project when she did this, and she's just taken it off from here. And we are so grateful and thankful that you're here to share your knowledge and experience with us, Beth. So thank you so much. Welcome, Beth, and welcome everyone.
Well, thank you, Manju. It's so fun just to see you guys and get to present a little bit of info. Hopefully, you will find it useful. I am going to warn you, I have a 2-year-old who's having dinner right now upstairs. So if you hear some screaming happening, that's him, but my husband's got him. So sorry in advance. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The notes are in. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, or maybe even like a couple days later, you're like thinking about something we went over, you can always go ahead and email me. I will get back to you as soon as I can. So my email address is on the handout, and it's also in the presentation. So again, you can contact me whenever, I'll get back to you. So couple things just to kind of talk to you guys about is that like Manju said, I started this as my master's project, and the reason I picked it for my master's project is when I first got hired in my district, they were like, okay, you have 2 self-contained special ed classes also that you get to teach, plus K5, ready, go. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So this whole project and kind of all my research came out of kind of getting thrown into it. So if you feel that way right now, which is why you're here, hopefully some of the things that I'll go through today will hopefully help you. So don't feel alone. I think this is one of the biggest things that pre-service teachers kind of lack when they come out of a program and into education is teaching this population. So, well, don't feel alone. I think everybody kind of struggles with this. So the biggest thing that I can talk about first is collaboration, really. You want to make sure you know the people who you can work with and talk to best meet the needs of our special education students. So some people who may be on that team are obviously the special education teacher, any of the teaching assistants that are also in the classroom, the social worker, speech pathologist, the OT, behavior analyst, I can't say the word tonight, physical therapist, usually administration is on that team as well. And then obviously the parents and the student, right? We don't want to forget the student because that's who we're really concerned about, right? So those are kind of the people that you may want to reach out to or talk to or collaborate when you are teaching special education population students. The biggest thing, and I think this just goes for teaching in general, is get to know your students, right? So one example is you might want to create kind of just like a little profile of every student that you have in that class. So here's just an example of one of my students, just 5th grade, their toileting skills, their level of independence, and then if there are any behaviors or maybe any motivators, that things that they work for, right? So just kind of having that tips or trick sheet like available for you quickly will be super helpful. And again, the more you work with the kids, obviously you'll get to know them too. But this is just kind of a good way to jump off as a good starting point, kind of at the beginning of the year, right? So another thing you may want to do is talk to the classroom teacher and kind of come up with a list of interventions. So for example, in the classroom, if they do a negative behavior, they may have something that they have to do before they can go back to what they were doing before. So for like example, you can see student A, if they have a negative behavior, such as like hitting or biting or something, they need to do a task, right? And then they can go back to whatever activity they were doing. So knowing kind of those interventions that are used in the general classroom will really help you in your room too. Okay, so just kind of thinking about ways that you can carry over that the interventions and management into your room too will be helpful for you because the student's already used to it. So just kind of a couple things to think about there. One way that I really learned a lot about students was going to their IEP meetings. If you are teaching like a self-contained program where the students are only in their special ed classroom for the majority of the day, lots of times art, music, or PE teachers may be asked to be the general education rep in the IEP meeting. So I asked to go when I was starting my master's project because I never really knew like what happened in an IEP meeting. I get this big stack of papers at the beginning of the year, right? But okay, great. Like what actually happens though? So asking to go is a really nice thing to do because usually you'll get to meet the parents too. And I think that's a huge collaborative effort too, is meeting parents. Obviously read the student's IEP. Now, if you've ever looked at an IEP, they're pretty lengthy. My district, luckily, our special ed teachers do something called a quick take, where they really just list like any accommodations or modifications. And then maybe if they have a BIP, which is the behavior intervention plan, that'll also be listed in there. So if your district does that, great. If not, those would kind of be the main things to watch out for. And then also the notes section at the end of an IEP, depending on who is taking notes in the IEP meeting, can be really helpful too. A lot of parent concerns and student concerns are put in there, so you can kind of go back and look through the notes section too, because that'll be like direct conversations that happened in the meeting. A lot of things that you can take and put into your music classroom would be like the behavioral goals, speech goals, and any assistive technology that the student might use, because again, that's opening up a way for them to communicate with you in your class. And then again, the talking to a behavior analyst, oh, I got it this time, will help you with any behaviors that may happen specifically in music class. If you have a student who is eloping a lot and maybe getting up and moving because they want to go play an instrument they see in your room or something, they can kind of come up with some different strategies or things to try out for you and the student to make it a little bit more productive when they're in your classroom. So another big thing that I have found really helpful is using visuals in your classroom. Luckily, my speech pathologist made me a visual schedule that I have kind of hanging up in my classroom. So when the kids come in, they know exactly what we're going to do that day. So basically, the first thing it'll say is time for music, and I have Velcro on the back of it, and it'll just stay on the Velcro strip. And then as we go through that schedule, I take it off. So right when they come in my room, they know it's time for music, and I know it's kind of blurry, but there's a picture of me on there too. So they know like Mrs. Maksym is the music teacher. And then you might have just a couple of things like they get student choice. So they would choose a song. They'll know like it's time for singing songs. Maybe they earn a break time at some point during class. Then it's time for instruments. Maybe it's time for movement and scarves. And then having like a closing song that is consistent at the end will also help students kind of know where you are in your routine for class. So just a couple other visuals that you could also include might be like lining up and goodbye too. So that way the students can see like, okay, we're at this point of class, but I only have to do 2 more things and then I get to go, right? So being able to kind of see where you are in the schedule. Another thing that you may want to try using is a choice board. So this kind of going back to that student choice section for them kind of being able to choose the song for the day, right? If you have a student who maybe music isn't their favorite thing, and it's not really a motivator for them. Giving them that choice and like leadership option would be huge. So these are just some of the songs that maybe we play in class consistently that they already know, and you could present them with the choice board, and then they would select the song, they pull it off the Velcro and hand it to you. And that way they're communicating what song they want. A stop go sign has also been super helpful for me because you're pairing that auditory cue of the teacher saying stop or go with a visual. And then also, anytime you can incorporate like pictures or stuffed animals, puppets, right? That's huge. Couple other things that I really didn't know before I got into working with this population was the different assistive technology that's out there that students may use. So the first one is called a PEX, or a picture exchange system. And there's usually a strip at the bottom that'll be a sentence strip. So it'll say like, I want, or I need. And then all of the students' choices will be on the top of it. So you can see like some of them, I think this one says I want, and then it might have a picture with like someone drinking a cup of water. So maybe the student wants a break and they want water. So in order for that to happen, they have to pull off what they want and put it on the sentence strip and then present it to the teacher or adult or who's ever helping. So if you have a student with this, I would talk to the speech pathologist and see if you could maybe get some visuals for music in there. So if the students are doing a song with egg shakers or something that day, they can pick the color of their egg shaker, or they can pick the color of their scarf, right, or their instrument. So being able to, again, kind of give them that power and control over their choices, right? Another system that may be used is an iPad, and a lot of my students use the iCommunicate app. And again, it's just an app where the student touches the button and then the voice will actually say what they want or what they need. And then also another kind of modification that can be used with it is a divider grid. So if students maybe don't have the best fine motor skills, this kind of helps them when they're touching it to be able to touch exactly what they want. So just kind of quick rundown on those things. Moving on, just kind of some different strategies that I've kind of found helpful is always starting with the same song or activity every week, which I know we as teachers will probably get super bored with it. But for these students, I noticed a huge difference in participation when they came in my room, because they knew right at the beginning of the song, we were going to do our welcome to music song every week. And they jumped right in at the beginning. It was funny. One time I had a substitute, I wasn't there, and the kids were so upset that the sub didn't play. It was like the whole thing. So just always being consistent and starting with the same song and also ending with the same song. That way, again, kind of sticking to that routine is big. Using simple language. So first we're going to do egg shakers, then we'll get to do scarves. So if you have a student who really loves scarves, that's their favorite thing, they may want scarves right away. And again, maybe using a visual to explain that and verbally saying it will be helpful for that student to understand, first we're going to do this, then you get your reward, right? Then you get your scarf. Couple other things which I found really hard as just an adult too, is giving students wait time after you give them a direction, because we're so used to, and especially this year, right, with like technology, is like hit a button and it happens. Giving students that time to process your question and then for them to come up with their answer and then for them to communicate that to you, that's multiple steps that they have to do. Plus, if the student has any sensory issues, they're also trying to get that information from you and filter out smells and sounds and light and maybe the temperature in the room, right? Things that we don't really think about if we're neurotypical. So kind of going through that, giving students that wait time. And it may be to the point where like you tell a student to clap their hands, and 3 or 4 songs or activities later, they will clap their hands. But again, giving them that wait time is huge. And then the last one is just eliminating any distractions in your room. That kind of goes along with students trying to filter out access stimuli. If you have all your ORF instruments set up in the corner of your room, that's what they're going to want, right? So maybe blocking them off with a mat, or maybe moving them to another part of the room where the students can't see it during their class may help you with some behaviors too. Couple different ways that I've tried structuring my class is kind of team teaching with other people. I'm lucky enough in my building to have a really good art and PE team that really helps me out, and vice versa. So what we did was we actually team taught art and music together. And then sometimes we would do music and PE as well. So the students would go to the art room and I would bring my stuff on a cart and go in there, and we would do different centers, and like one center would be art, one center would be music, and then one was like a break time where they got preferred activities, like maybe a computer where they got to watch move it videos, or maybe a favorite book was in the bin, or some different fidgets or preferred activities. I really found this helpful because for some students, my classes are 35 minutes long, and for some students that is way, way, way too long. So breaking it down into that 15 minutes and just doing a couple activities was really helpful. And then it was also nice just to see the students in another setting. When it was time for art, sometimes if I wasn't doing a center that day, I would actually just do art with the students for 15 minutes, and then the art teacher would do music with the students for the next 15 minutes. So it was nice to see some of the students in an art setting. I had one student that refused to do anything in music, so I chose to kind of do a lot of hand over hand with him for his art projects, and then by the end of that year, he was participating in music because we had developed that relationship together. So same thing with music. There might be students that are doing music, but not necessarily art. So kind of being able to see the kids in another setting and work with them that way can be super useful. So here's just kind of a picture of how we had the art room set up. Like I talked about earlier, the centers, one center might be the teaching assistants running it. So you may have to have like a meeting with them and explain like, okay, I'm going to give you this bin of instruments. This is how you play them. Set a timer, let the kids play the instruments, right? And then maybe rotate. Or the Go Noodle videos, Move It videos, or like I showed you the choice board before, maybe you just give the teaching assistants a computer with songs already loaded on it, and the students just get to pick whatever song they want and they can listen to it. Center 2, like I said, might be music, 3 might be art, and then center 4 would be like the break. We were really strict about using timers because as soon as that timer went off, the students knew, okay, next thing is coming. And a lot of my special education teachers in their classroom use timers like throughout the day, all the time. So the kids were really, really used to it. And again, trying to keep things consistent between classrooms is really helpful too. And then one other thing is just make sure if you are going to try centers, I guess it depends on the kids, but it was easier for the teachers to rotate than having 3 or 4 kids get up from the table and move to another table, especially if you have some students who might try to elope or drop to the floor. It was a lot easier for the teachers to rotate than the students. So that's just a couple different ways you can set your classroom up or how you're going to structure your classes. So now let's talk about some resources and kind of do some fun stuff. So Quaver is a resource. I'm sure lots of us have maybe heard of it, tried it out. So just a couple things that I wanted to go over that have really worked for my students and kind of giving them choices and giving them options to kind of compose. Actually, because I think that was one of the biggest things that I felt like I wasn't doing with my special education and my self-contained students was kind of letting them create their own stuff, right? So one of the things that Quaver has is a body percussion dance. So this will take a second to load. There we go. So the different actions are kind of listed on the side, and I made like a choice board card collection with all these on there. And then I would hold it up, the students would pull it off, and then I would put it up on the board and select what they wanted. And then we could try the dance together. So does anybody want to pick one? We could try a couple together. I don't know if anyone feels brave today, wants to come up with a dance, even though I'm sure we all did that today during school.
I love the cheek thing when I with my students.
Awesome. So we're click and drag the cheeks.
Because you can see it on the screen too.
Yes, exactly. Anybody else want to be brave?
How about some Pathanese?
Pathanese. Oh, always a good standard, right? Good. All right. I'll pick tap head, and then maybe we do snapping too. Okay, so that's just like one example, and then you can play one of the tracks with it, and then the kids would get to perform what they wrote with it. So they're doing pat, pat, snap, pat, snap, right? So just an option, you can do that. Quaver does have it in meters of 4 and 3 too. So you could always change it up if the kids might do better with one over the other. Another activity that we really liked in my school was, this is kind of like I think it's in their warm-ups just for like choir, but my students loved this because it gave them a chance to like move and stretch and stuff like that. So just to save some time, I'll just do this really quick. So let's say we do this. And again, it is kind of tricky with just it being words. So on the choice board, I actually have pictures of like me doing the different things and the words. So the students are picking the action if they're not able to read it with the verbal. So then we go ahead, we pick our tempo, we click begin, and then the kids will do it. Okay, so just to give you guys an idea, that's another one that's been pretty helpful. The next one I'm going to show you, this is like a huge fan favorite in my class. This is really similar to Incredibox, if anybody has done anything with that. This one's a little bit more, I think, kid-friendly because all the characters, they don't have like no shirts on. It's like a whole thing. So going through for percussion, it will open up and it gives the kids choices of different animals, which apparently that doesn't want to load. So let's try this one more time. The different animals will pop up. And again, I have like the choice board with the pictures. And so the kids will get to pick them and drag them to the little turtle shells. So does anybody want to pick one or pick a couple?
I will. So
right.
The snake.
Awesome.
And then the rabbit.
And the rabbit. Great. Let's do squirrel. Anybody else want to pick the last one? Or I can
Beaver.
Beaver. Awesome. All right. And there is an option to add another 4 beats as well. You can do 8 total. And then, of course, you got to pick your tempo, right? And then we just click on the frog to do play. And you can silence them too to like kind of make it a rest. So we like the kids love that because the animals are sleeping. So that's always a fun choice too. So that's just a couple of things on Quaver. Some other resources that I found really helpful for just like finger plays or keeping a steady beat or working on any of that stuff. A collection of childhood favorites by Susie Tallman is great. It's got a very repetitive steady beat and underline bass line that's super, super repetitive and it's super easy to follow. So one I can play for you right now is just her Little Peter Rabbit. So.
Little Peter Rabbit had a fly up on his ear. Little Peter Rabbit had a fly up on his ear. Little Peter Rabbit had a fly up on his ear.
So that's just a quick little example from that. She's got, I think there's about 20 songs on that album. So another, if you're from like the Chicago area, Jim Gill is a really local musician. I think he's out of Oak Park. He's got a lot of really fun finger plays that my students like. And he does some stuff with like classical music, incorporating different movements and things into it too. So that's kind of fun. Music play. Everybody probably is familiar with Denise Gagne, but if you're not, Some songs that my kids really like and just kind of some of the goals. Elephants Have Wrinkles is great for fine motor, keeping a steady beat. Sequencing is really good because the elephant has wrinkles like on their fingers, and then they have wrinkles on their nose, and then they have wrinkles on their fingers and their nose and their head and their tail or whatever. So the kids are sequencing those different activities. She also has One Green Jelly Bean. This one is really fun. The kids are jumping and getting wiggles out, and they also have to do some body part identification because it's like they ate the jelly bean and their tummy hurts, so we're touching our tummy. And then the clap, stamp, shake song. This is kind of the one that I do for ending class every time, no matter what. So I'll go ahead and play that one for you guys. You can hear it.
You can clap your hands. You can clap your hands. When the day is done and you want some fun, you can clap your hands. You can stamp your feet.
So then they do stamp your feet, and then they do shake your head, and then at the end, it's you can say blah, 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 and the kids just get to make a fun sound and kind of fill in those beats. So that's a couple of things from the movement songs children love that I found really helpful in my room. Just some other kind of random resources, beanbag activities. This one is great. I have a lot of students who in their IEP, wait time was actually one of their goals, or taking turns was one of their goals. So the one game of Who's Got the Beanbag is really helpful because they're passing a beanbag around the circle, and then the song will give them different directions. So it's like they're passing, oh, stop. And then there's a part where they're like, you have the beanbag, what's your name? And so the students either say their name or they can use their assistive technology to say their name that way. Right now, obviously, I've been teaching remotely all year. So I've had kids do this just at home on Zoom with maybe balled up socks, and they're just passing the beanbag back and forth and keeping the steady beat that way. So this year, that's kind of what we've done, but just so you guys can hear that one. So again, it's just,
Well, let's all form a circle now. Let's make a circle that's nice and round.
And then it does get into the directions later on. Another one that's fun to do with scarves is the parade of colors. So what I usually do is I'll give every student a different color scarf. And I've had some students that have pretty low mobility too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a parade. Everybody can just stand in their spot or sit in their spot. And then when their color is called, maybe they wiggle their scarf. Okay, so there's lots of possibilities you can do with that song too. So just so you can kind of hear this one.
Make a way for the parade of colors. They are marching all around. There is purple and pink, red and green, yellow, orange, blue, and brown. Make a way for the parade of colors. They are marching.
So then again, the students are working on identifying colors. They're working on trying to move to a steady beat. A lot of starting and stopping too. So I may use my stop go sign with this one too to motion like, okay, it's yellow's turn, or okay, now stop, it's red's turn. So doing things like that. A couple other ones from Music K-8 that my students really like. The wiggle worm one is great with scarves too, because we can go through and I'll play it for you really quick, but there's a definite like wiggle, 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 and then there's a stop and freeze. So it's good again for that following directions. So I would always pair on the stand with a statue. I held up my stop sign too. And one time we had a student who was pretty much nonverbal and usually used a communication device. And one time in class, all of a sudden she decided, she was like, stop. And it was like one of the first times that anyone had heard her talk. And we were all just like bawling. Like it was crazy. So, and again, that was after using that song probably for like 40 times in music class. So it was awesome to kind of see that development in that student too. So wiggle worm's a good one. Shaky egg is another one that's fun with egg shakers. And again, it's very shake, 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 stop. So again, that following directions is pretty helpful, not only for your room, but also just enforcing that listening skills. And again, knowing start and stop may be a goal for some students too. So next thing was my district was lucky enough to get a grant to try piloting some different adaptive instruments for our students in our self-contained program. Because a lot of our students have, like I said, pretty low mobility or might have a rough time with like fine motor skills. If you think of playing like traditional instruments like a hand drum or an egg shaker, they might not be able to grip it. So a lot of these adaptive instruments that you kind of see in this middle picture, they have something called a switch that gets plugged into it. And it basically kind of looks like, if you remember Bop It from like a million years ago, it's got the button from Bop It on there. And so all the student has to do is touch the button and then the instrument would play. So like you can see this one has, there's like a little snare drum on there, a triangle and a maraca. So the student touches the button and then that instrument plays. So these are just some adaptive instruments. The website is Enabling Devices, if you guys want to check that one out. And then West Music does sell these awesome mallets that I've found really useful for a lot of my students who may come with a general education class for music. And the one thing I did kind of have to add to mine was like a textured tape so that they could hold on to it and grip it a little bit better because they did have some fine motor issues. But again, it has kind of like a T grip, which is a lot easier to hold, right, than the traditional. So that's just one thing to kind of check out. West Music also has some adaptive keyed recorders that are nice for my students that come with our general education class because it's easier to push down the key, right, than trying to cover holes all the way. And then Sweet Pipes also has some adaptive recorders where you can take the instrument actually apart and you can add different parts in that actually close off the tone holes. So maybe if you're class is playing BAG, but maybe you have a student who you're making a modification to it and you only want them to play G, you can put that part on the recorder and then they'll only be playing G. So that's, again, you can check that out on Sweet Pipes too. And I think West Music has that too. So just kind of some things to think about there. Another thing that I've been using, and it's a ton, I've been using it this year, especially because like I said, I've been pretty much remote the whole year, is a lot of children's literature. That has been like my saving grace this year. So one book that we use a lot in my classroom is Sheep in a Jeep by Nancy Shaw, and Margot Apple does the illustrations. And they're beautiful. Like I love her. I mean, look at the motion of the sheep pulling the Jeep. It's great. So the other nice thing about this is it's actually, it comes with a audio CD and people are reading it. So what I kind of did was we added in egg shakers to this song, and every time the tone would chime for the person to turn the page, I used that as kind of like an auditory visual and sound, and then I paired it with the stop and go sign for my visual, and the kids knew then it was time to play their egg shaker. So if you have maybe an egg shaker next to you, or I don't know, a box of pasta, whatever, you want to go grab it, we can try this. So here's like the beginning.
Listen for this sound.
So here's the sound.
And you'll know it's time to turn the page. If you'd like to listen to the story without the page turn signals, please select track 2. Beep, beep.
And then I do
in a Jeep on a hill that's steep.
So you kind of get the idea. This is a really fun, adorable book because the Jeep end up crashing the Jeep at the end, and then they sell it for cheap. It's really funny. So check it out. That one's cute. One time I was in class and I had like the CD totally didn't work, and I was like, what am I going to do? So you can also use a bike horn. I gave it to one of the teaching assistants, and they were in charge of playing it, and then I did the stop and the go. But it works. So even if you can't find the audio CD, you could throw the bike horn in there and use it kind of the same way. So that is one of them. Another book that I found really helpful with kind of like melody work and any just like different pitch and changing up and down and high and low is Hungry Harry. If any of you have taken ORF Level 1 at the Undercook, Cynthia uses this book a lot for different recorder things, and I think she did a special session when I took it with her. So I did include her melody that she wrote that she does with this book in the notes. So if you want to try that, but basically Harry is a little frog and he's super hungry, and his mom says, I'm not cooking you dinner, so get out of the house, go find your own food. And he tries to go eat all these other animals and he can't catch any of them. So the way that I use it in my classroom, I have my little frog and we just go through the book maybe the first time and I just sing the song and I would just trace the melody. So here we go. So we've got, the very hungry frog was looking for a snack. If you happen to be a dragonfly, you'd better watch your back, right? And so then we're just tracing the melody with the frog. So maybe after doing this for a couple weeks, you might start to notice some students might follow you with maybe their hands, right? Or even just like a finger tracing the melody. So then if it's appropriate, maybe you start giving the frog to students and let them try it. So again, just some different ways you can do that. Another one, and I actually discovered this book because my son loves it. And then I was like, oh, we're doing this in school. So this is Bath Time for Chickies. And the chickies are super naughty. They don't want to take a bath. You get the idea. So there's a lot of things that they get into a mess. They try to eat cupcakes. They jump in the mud with the pigs and everything. So a couple different things you can do with this book. There's lots of good vocal exploration in here. They get into like a bottle of perfume. And so it's like, you. So you can add different things like that. And again, just seeing if the students can vocalize some of those sounds, right? And for me, that totally counts as melody and singing because they're vocalizing. And if that's what they can do, great. Other things I've done with this book is maybe trying some different sensory things with it. And again, double check with your special ed teachers because some students might have some sensitivities with things. But I've used like silly string and like blowing bubbles. And maybe if you have like a handheld personal fan, they do like get all dry and fluffy and clean. You can just kind of wave the fan in front of the kids. So just again, kind of bringing the story to life for them. The bubbles were a huge hit too. But again, check with the teacher because you may have some students, if they have very sensitive skin or kind of some allergy issues, using those different things may be a no-no. So obviously check first. Another book that's been great for, again, kind of students kind of getting to compose and also for vocal exploration is Roadwork by Sally Sutton and Brian Lovelock does the pictures. So there's lots of steady beat options in here with the text. So you've got plan the road, mark it on the map, hammer in the marking pegs, ping, bang, tap. So again, using different sounds with the book might be the way you introduce it just for the first couple weeks. And then eventually maybe giving the students like body percussion cards with stamp, pat, clap, or maybe you just limit it to 2 if that's where the students are. And then they get to make their own pattern and they try keeping the steady beat that way. And it might be the first week you just give them stamp. And then maybe the second week you add a stamp and a clap. So kind of going really deep into one certain material multiple times and kind of pulling out all those little gems that you can is huge, because that repetition is really good. Another one is Little Blue Truck. But there's like a whole series of these now. There's a Halloween one, there's a spring one, there's a Christmas one that has light up twinkle lights at the end of it. So a couple of things I've done with this one. Again, lots of vocal exploration. Like the toad is croaking, Little Blue Truck goes beep, beep, beep a lot. All the different farm animals, the horse, the cow, the pig, the chickens. So again, just getting students to maybe vocalize, or even I have one student who's pretty much nonverbal, but he has animal sounds on his iPad. So one day we took this book and we had the animals and we were just making different vocal patterns. So like maybe you had horse, horse, cow, and it was neigh, neigh, moo. And he actually had horse and cow on his speaking device, and he was clicking neigh, neigh, moo on his speaking device. And his mom was like, look, he's doing it, and like held it up and everything on Zoom. So it was great. So again, lots of opportunities with this one. The cool thing about if you get the board book one, there is like a downloadable party kit, I guess, for like a birthday party. But they have like really big 8.5 by 11 animal visuals for all the animals in the book. So you can print those out, laminate them, and then have the kids maybe hold them up to when the animals are mentioned. I've done that a couple of times. Some other books, 10-9-8 by Molly Bang is great, just for kind of that sequencing and counting and steady beat. Plus it's just a really cute like bedtime story. It's great if you ever do like a concert and you need a theme. So I like it too because it counts down, because a lot of the kids are so used to going 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is sequencing backwards. So it goes like 10 small toes, all washed and warm. So we might touch our toes and count and go like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then maybe we count up too. And then it's a lot of things that the kids can relate to and maybe are working on in their vocabulary. So like stuffed animals, their toys, right? Windows, they get to count the 8 windows. And just really cute book. The pictures in here are great too. Another series that I found really helpful if you do consider doing like centers and you need books to put in there, maybe just for their like free time or break time. Indestructibles is a book series that was developed by a mom. And it's mostly, it is for babies and toddlers, but if you have any students that maybe mouth a lot of objects or have destructive behaviors, these books are like 100% indestructible. Like you can't rip it. And my son has chewed on like all of them and they're all still intact. So the other great thing about them is they have a lot of just like quick little song tales. So like they have Itsy Bitsy Spider, Twinkle Little Star, like tons of just little songs that you can do quickly, or the kids might even just be able to kind of sing through it with the teaching assistants. Another one that's really fun is Busy City from Indestructibles, because it's just pictures, but then the people or the animals are doing little vocalizations. So like there's a girl on a skateboard and it says like swoosh. So maybe just kind of practicing those little vocalizations. And then there's like people driving or on the train. So it's like toot, toot, boom, and all kinds of different sounds that they can make along with the book. So that's kind of low down on children's literature. I know I'm going really fast. But again, if you have any questions about any of these books, or maybe if you come up with an idea for it, like let me know, because I'm all for it. So the other part, like Manju said, this was like my master's project at Vandercook. So basically coming up with resources and planning lessons and coming up with ways to structure class was part of it. But really my main thing was writing a curriculum and then assessing it as well for self-contained special education. So if you kind of end up in the same boat I was, where it's like, okay, here, ready, go. Here's just kind of maybe quick way you could do it in like a weekend, I guess. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. I picked maybe 4 things to really focus on. For my students, a lot of steady beat and rhythm is kind of interchangeable just because that's where they were. And again, Brian Burnett always talks about like if the rhythm keeps repeating, then it kind of becomes the steady beat. If you're always doing ta ta ti ti ta 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 ti ti ta, right? So a lot of that I kind of group together. Other things that you might pick are like melody, vocalization, and maybe instrument skills. So the students being able to start playing the instrument and stop playing the instrument when given a visual or oral cue, right? Then I also chose some non-musical goals to include in my curriculum that maybe could assist or help the students in meeting their IEP goals too. I did not track any of that data in my room like the teaching assistants or the teacher might in theirs, but I figured why not give them a little bit extra practice when they're in my room, right? And then basically for each lesson, I had a goal for that student. And when I was picking those goals, I really tried to focus on things that maybe I knew the student was really good at, and then maybe things that they were struggling with or I knew that they could improve on too. I kind of picked. So just an example, like if we look at Hungry Harry really quick, there's the standards, the source, what the musical goal is, and then also just listing out the additional goals and maybe things that were in their IEP. And then here was like the goals for each student. So just to kind of have it be anonymous, I labeled every student with a letter and I didn't use student names, but you can see like student A is going to use the full lesson plan. They'll participate. They might need 1 or 2 prompts and they can perform the study beat independently. So that's what their goal was for that study beat lesson that we did that day. But then if you look at like student J, the adaptive lesson plan they're going to follow, they may participate with 3 to 4 prompts and they may need hand or hand assistance to keep the study beat. So again, just kind of thinking, where are the kids? Where can we get them by the end of the lesson or even the unit or, you know, by the end of the year in certain concepts. So here's maybe how I would set up a sample lesson. So again, I usually do an intro song, maybe some kind of study beat, vocal exploration, instruments, maybe throw a book in there, and then do a closing song. And again, I always keep my intro one and my closing song the same so they know where they're going throughout class. They know when it starts, they know when it ends. And then also maybe using that visual schedule again, I might have like a little picture of bath time for chickies so they know we're doing that right before the end. So real quick, because I know we're starting to run out of time here. If you have students that come to your general education classes, but are typically in a self-contained class, some things you can maybe try out. Color coding pitches, especially for recorder, I have found is super helpful. And even for some of my general education students that maybe have an IEP, I've used this too, and it's great. Maybe even modifying the instrument parts or making it just simple rhythms, right? Instead of making the student focus on pitch and rhythm. Maybe they just start out with the rhythm the first couple weeks and then we try adding pitch in. Giving them less choices. And again, using the adaptive instruments like a mallet. And then one thing, just because I was confused about this too, when I first started kind of diving into all of this, accommodations are changes to how the student learns. So maybe giving them more wait time, maybe using a visual and the RLQ together, right? Versus modifications, which is changing what the student learns. Okay, so just kind of keeping that straight. Because I used to mix those up all the time. So just a little tip for that. Again, communicate with your special education team. If it's not working, I've had some students that come to the modified music class and then they also come with their general education class because they felt for general education, maybe they were super overwhelmed and it was way too many kids because a lot of these kids are used to being in a classroom, at least in my building with, I mean, I have some that are like 5 kids and that's it. And then you throw them in a class of like 30, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. So maybe communicating, trying out different things, anything communication wise will be huge to help you when students are included in your general education class. Maybe think about changing your goals or your outcomes for the student. Maybe they only come to music for 15 minutes instead of the full 35. And then another thing that's pretty big is don't assume that students that are included in the general education class will struggle. I had 2 twin brothers, and they were both on the autism spectrum, and they were verbal but not very. And they came into my class in first grade and were able to match pitch and sing with these like beautiful little singing voices in first grade, where I had some kids that were general education students that couldn't match pitch until, like we all have that happen. So just not coming in with preconceived, I guess, ideas that these kids are going to struggle is a big one. And then again, focusing on what they can do. So if you have a student who's very friendly, then pair them with a partner, right? Or maybe make it their job to pass out supplies, and that's like their moment to shine in music class, right? So just kind of thinking of things that they can do and really focusing on those strengths. Another thing that I think is really big is preparing the general education kids that we're going to have some new friends that you may not see in your classroom with your classroom teacher, but when you come to music, they are going to be here with us. And for my lower grades, like K2, I've used these books before, that I See Things Differently and The Big Umbrella, to kind of just use it as like an intro, maybe like the first or second week of school before some kids may be joining our class. And then for my older students, we do a lot of peer buddy programs because my building is kind of the house for our self-contained special ed for my district. So we actually have a lot of our kids in our honors classes are lunch buddies and recess buddies with a lot of our self-contained special ed kids. So they are great helpers in the classroom too. One thing to kind of think a lot about is, because I felt pretty defeated after my first year of doing this, and I was just like, this is so hard. I don't know what I'm doing. So just kind of knowing it's a process. And one thing that I found really helpful was videotaping class. And I know that's like, oh, who wants to do that? But it really, the camera does not lie. So if you're like, oh, I did not give that kid enough wait time, like that was not good. Or sometimes what I would catch is like, if we were doing a center and I would be with another group, all of a sudden the kid who wouldn't clap their hands at all during music class is clapping along with the music that I'm doing at the other center. So you do catch like the kids maybe participating, just not when you were teaching them. So videotaping was really helpful. And then another thing that I did, and this was actually not my choosing, it was just in my schedule, was I actually would go and help the kids eat lunch in the lunchroom and go to recess. I had recess duty with them too. And that was like eye-opening because I could see kind of how they functioned, what they worked for, the different teaching assistants that they got along with, and maybe the teaching assistants that they didn't get along with very well. So just kind of, if you can ever maybe skip your plan, I know that's hard and nobody wants to do it, but maybe pop in the room and see, like, how does this student work? Are there things they work for if they're really struggling in your room? And just kind of seeing them in a different environment will help. Another thing to maybe consider is doing a concert. A pre-COVID world explosion, we used to do a Thanksgiving feast every year at my school with our self-contained special ed classes. And you can see we had like a popcorn turkey. My principal's carving the turkey. It was like a whole big thing, right? So the kids would do a couple songs for their parents first. So I'll go ahead and just play you guys like a little snippet of that. Sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. Of course you are, because we almost got to the end of this thing and I haven't had any issues. So here we go. Here, let's see. Hopefully it'll load now. It maybe just timed out. If it doesn't, oh, maybe. Here we go. So just to kind of show you guys how that can work. And that was huge for my parents. Like, I had parents coming up to me in tears because they never thought their kid would get to do a concert. So again, it's just a really nice way to include the kids and give them those opportunities that we give our other students too. So here are some resources if you want to kind of delve into this a little bit more. And I actually think Alice Hamill might be teaching a music and special ed class at Vandercook this summer, and she has a ton of great resources out there. So you may want to check that out if you're into that. And there's also a link on there to my grad school project if you want to read through the whole thing. And also there was another Vandercook grad who did kind of the same project that I did, but she did it for middle school students. So maybe if you have upper grades too, like 6 through 8, you might want to check hers out too. So I know we literally have like 1 minute left, but I think Manju was going to kind of keep the chat and questions, and maybe I can send an email with answers. I'm not sure how we want to do this, but thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Beth. And this is so amazing because we are exactly at the 7 o'clock hour. Okay. This is beautiful. So thank you for this wealth of information. And I think you're probably going to get a lot of questions via email, but
Great.
I think all the stuff that you have in this presentation is incorporated in your notes. So all the links are in Beth's presentation. So those of you who sent me questions about the links, etc., and everything is in the notes. And if you want to shoot Beth an email, she's just amazing. Well, she is a membership chair for our GCOSC, which means she's really good about communicating in a timely manner, in a very timely manner. So I will say thank you, Beth, so much. This has been such a great wealth of information. Thank you for being so generous and spending your time with us today and sharing everything.